As we've become better at preventing complex, multifaceted attacks like 9/11, terrorists turn to less complicated acts of violence like the mass shootings that are all too common in our society. It is this type of attack that we saw at Fort Hood in 2009, in Chattanooga earlier this year, and now in San Bernardino. There are several steps that Congress should take right away. To begin with, Congress should act to make sure no one on a no-fly list is able to buy a gun. What could possibly be the argument for allowing a terrorist suspect to buy a semi-automatic weapon?
Dissidents. You always do. Political dissidents are on the no-fly list.
We also need to make it harder for people to buy powerful assault weapons, like the ones that were used in San Bernardino.
So just finished watching the president's third Oval Office address. So you know that it's important. I think Obama's feeling a little bit lonely. All these candidates are getting all of the attention. He's looking more and more like a lame duck, even though he's going to be president for another year. So, you Confederate fucking racist, terrorist, wannabe motherfuckers, I guess you got put up with having a black president for an entire another year. And, you know, it was a general speech, but it made me just wonder, you know, what exactly happened at Bernardino. And so Bernardino, I think that's how you say it, Bernardino, yeah. So Bernardino, what happened there? What happened at Bernardino? Was it a terrorist attack or co-worker strategy? And he says he offered no new details on the investigation into the San Bernardino attack, saying that so far we have no evidence that the killers were directed by a terrorist organization overseas or that they were part of a broader conspiracy here at home. If somebody from America was just inspired to just go on a rampage, and these rampages happen all the time for nonsensical reasons, right? Dylan Roof, just because he's a racist. There's workplace violences. There's some vengeance. There's just sometimes, you know, the D.C. sniper, what were they doing? They were just kind of just shooting people for fun. So you can't really, there's no way to stop, you know, the Colorado shooter at Planned Parenthood. At any point, they just get inspired and they want to go attack somebody. You can't stop that. But if it wasn't terrorism, if it was workplace vengeance, that's a whole nother conversation. So when they were at this Christmas party, Farouk and Tashfeen, right? Farouk is the guy, and Tashfeen is his Saudi Arabian, Pakistani wife. When they were at the Christmas party, there was an argument that he walked away agitated. He was pissed off. Some people say it might be a premature detonation. He was going to do something bigger, but then the workers just pissed him off, you know, making fun of his beard, making fun of his religion, his clothes, his wife, whatever they were doing. He was lonely. He didn't have as many friends. So, I mean, if that's different. Workplace violence is a different thing than, you know, religious attacks just for the hell of it. The terrorist attack in Bernardino was done by Saeed Rizwan Farouk and Tashfeen Malik. Tashfeen and Farouk. Now, Farouk is born in America, born in Chicago. And so I don't know what's going on with Chicago, but we need to level Chicago. You know, I don't care what you say. Every person from Chicago is a terrorist, and they want to kill us. So we got to get into Chicago. We got to see what's going on in Chicago. The Justice Department held just Laquan McDonald, right? The cops right there just shoot motherfuckers like 17 times for walking down the fucking street. And they shoot you when you're dead. Even when you're dead, you know, 17 bullets is what the police had shot, and they shot like 85 bullets. So where did they learn that shit from? Chicago. That's where Farouk came from, but she had actually came from a guy in the Planned Parenthood, Colorado Springs. He was inspired by Carly Fiorina, right? So Carly Fiorina is creating homegrown terrorists, right-wing Christian terrorists. But something that people aren't talking about, I mean, Tashfeen Malik. The woman has control in the relationship. In every heterosexual relationship, if you're the woman, you win. So Farouk really had, you know, no, he didn't have much of a say. The director of the FBI said that the shooters of the San Bernardino shootings were not part of any terrorist cell or network, and they weren't directed by any group. So these were just people that lived in America and got inspired. The guy lived here, but he had married this Tashfeen Malik, and she was born in Pakistan, but she was raised in Saudi Arabia. She goes back to Pakistan, gets some college, but he meets her in Saudi Arabia. In Saudi Arabia, they behead motherfuckers all the goddamn time. And Saudi Arabia is where 17 of the 19 hijackers were from. Great ally in the region, right? We attack innocent countries. Don't fuck with Saudi Arabia, even though they're the country producing the terrorists that are attacking Americans. What the fuck? We're in Syria and Iraq, and what about Saudi Arabia? Either Tashfeen Malik or Saeed Rizwan Farouk had a criminal record, so a background check wouldn't have stopped them from anything. They were not on the terrorist watch list, so they still would have been able to get their guns. Gun control, until we have criminal justice reform and poverty and shit like that, I can't, they weren't on the terrorist watch list, but Adam Kokesh is. Adam Kokesh's crime, he was dancing at the Jefferson Memorial. Oh, you were dancing at the Jefferson Memorial? You can't fucking fly no more. Oh, okay. So that's the people that we're going to be targeting, but that misses, what the fuck? Something, shit happens. Sometimes you can't prevent it, Now, it's actually kind of interesting with Farouk. Farouk, grew up in Chicago. He graduated school, went to, some place, and got a bachelor's degree in environmental health, moved out to California. He was a health inspector in the Department of Health. All his coworkers in the Department of Health in San Bernardino said he was quiet and polite. But something that we haven't mentioned is that he grew up in an abusive household. And child abuse is a motherfucker. You know who else got beat up as a kid? Adolf Hitler. 80 to 90% of Americans believe in corporal punishment against their children. Violence begets violence. Might is right. You're teaching that violence is okay. That's how you solve the problems, the same way that Chicago police did with Laquan McDonald. Our government is the potent, omnipresent teacher for good or ill. Our government is the potent, omnipresent teacher for good or ill. It teaches the whole people by its example. So, with child abuse, with police brutality, and this is capitalistic. It's a very cutthroat society. Your own economic well-being is on you in America. That's just how it is. So something that people haven't mentioned, there was an argument that had happened right before, they shot the place up. Maybe the coworkers were a bunch of assholes. Maybe they were racist. Maybe they were shitty. I don't know. Just throwing that out there. Here's a quote by Griselda Reisinger, what is that? Is that Baltic, Eastern European? He never struck me as a fanatic. This is from FoxNews.com. They quoted her as saying, he never struck me as a fanatic. He never struck me as suspicious. This person worked with Farouk. I would say hi and bye, but we never engaged in conversation. He didn't say much at all. Hi and bye. That's just Americans, but, that's not really warm and friendly. That's not like, ooh, I can't wait to go hang out with you and work together, and supposedly he was out in the field more than he was in the office. But, that's Americans. Americans aren't very warm and friendly people. Capitalism is cutthroat. Two other curiosities were, why did they attack, at his workplace? What was this symbolic significance of the workplace? You're going to try to just do as much damage as possible, maybe just access or something. But then also the Daesh, however you say it, the ISIS people, they, why did ISIS not take credit for it? If this is ISIS and this is terrorism, why didn't they take credit for it? So that's, it's peculiar, to say the least. So Farouk flies to Saudi Arabia, marries Tashfeen, gets her over on a K-1 fiance visa, but she was the primary planner. She's the mastermind. He was born and raised in America, Chicago, in California, college educated here, but she was, that's pussy power. That's pussy power. Do not underestimate the power of the pussy. In fact, you had Miley Cyrus that said that she trumps Jimmy Fallon, who was voted most sexiest man of the year, because she has titties. She got titties, so she wins. Right? 85 bullets in 4 minutes. This shit happens quick. Happens like that. Meanwhile, in Finland, they're proposing to give every citizen. The history of San Bernardino is actually quite fascinating too. They're colonized by Spanish conquistadors, Christian missionaries, then Mexico, then Mormons. And so, the original people in San Bernardino were the Serrano Indians, also known as the Yuhuatum. But, the English Christians, or the Spanish Christians and the European Christians had to wipe them all out. You can't have justice on stolen land. 80% of Americans are scared that another ISIS attack will happen. I can walk around pretty much anywhere in America and not see any Muslims. I don't see any Muslims at all. I'm not saying that they don't exist, but for 80% of Americans to be scared, of, and it's not ISIS, it's Daesh. So let's try to say Daesh, right? They're not fucking Muslims, they're Daesh. But for 80% of Americans to be scared, turn your fucking TVs off. Turn them off. Seriously, you sitting there and getting all fucking bothered and scared because Fox News, all that is packaged pretty, just because it's packaged pretty. All that glitters is not gold. And last point, meanwhile, in Finland, they're proposing to give every single citizen $870 per month. Every citizen in Finland is going to get $870 per month. They can afford that. They also have free education, free health care. And in addition to that, they're going to get a constant check. They're going to get a guaranteed income, a guaranteed minimum income. We could afford shit like that if we actually cared about ourselves. But so apparently we are at war with Daesh in Syria, France and Britain. They're bombing Syria right now. And then the far right-wing politicians in France just got elected. So if we're afraid right before the election, Donald Trump will be our fucking president. Laquan McDonald, 17 shots in Chicago just yesterday, Saturday morning, December 5th, 2015. Mario Woods in San Francisco, he got shot. He had a knife, right? He had 6, 5, 7, a bunch of cops around him. He was walking around with a knife. They killed him in Miami Beach. Actually, that happened Thursday. Mario Woods got shot on Thursday. But Miami Beach happened yesterday morning, and that was with the shirtless man. He had a shirtless man. He had a razor blade, shot twice in the chest with a rifle. The media didn't tell us who the cop was that had killed that guy in Miami Beach. And while these guys had done something, they stabbed somebody. This Miami Beach guy goes into a bank and hands him a note, says, "Hey, I'm gonna do something," but he doesn't. Walks away. Nothing happens. But then eventually he's got a little razor blade, pow pow, shoot him right in the chest. So far, over 1,000 people, 1,048 Americans have been murdered by the police. You're so scared of Daesh. 80% of Americans are scared of Daesh. How many are afraid that a cop is going to kill another one of us? Over 1,000 Americans. You're more likely to be shot by a cop than a terrorist. And then what about, the murder of Eric Garner? Daniel Pontalillo. Pontalillo is still walking around amongst us. Daniel Pontalillo, a terrorist, a murderer, cold-blooded murderer. Not only is he walking amongst us, he's still getting paid by the government. He's got lots of high connections in the government. These motherfuckers, they protect their own. They protect, if you're a murderer, they protect you. Not a problem. Thou shalt not kill. Does anybody else believe? Am I the only motherfucker out here that believes thou shalt not kill? Does me having morals prevent me from, being all that I can be. R.I.P. Walter Scott, North Carolina. Ferguson, never forget Ferguson. So the co-workers had actually made fun of Farouk's beard, and I'm not justifying this. He killed 14 people. Him and his wife had killed 14 people. At least that's what the media has reported. But the lawyer had pointed out that they had made fun of his beard and that he was an isolated person that didn't have very many friends. So could have been depression. There's he could have got radicalized. I mean, that's a possibility too. But then there's also another issue, and I'll go back to my first point, but another issue is he grew up in a violent household. His father was very abusive to his mother, and at one point he had actually tried to get in between them, and yet the father would complain that he's going to kill himself and suicide, and then she would always... The reason that it matters is if it's because we want to hurry up and have a rush to, let's declare this terrorism so we can start bombing people. 130 people got killed in Paris, and now they're, bombing Syrians, and the right-wing politicians are gaining power, and freedoms and rights are being curtailed. So, I don't want this to happen. I don't want, those who give up freedom for security deserve neither. Benjamin Franklin. So if this is a workplace shooting, that's happened before several times. In Louisville, Fort Knox, there is some plant, people are disgruntled, then that's different than terrorism. If he's getting made fun of, his beard, and he was being made fun of by the coworkers, maybe he just, couldn't handle it and said, fuck it. That's different. And so that's different. That's no reason to bomb a country, if it's a workplace sort of revenge killing, than if it had been terrorism, influenced by just hating the West, Boko Haram. I hate the, education of the West. Even if it was terrorism, I don't know if we should be bombing entire countries. What happens if Planned Parenthood was terrorism, white, male, Christian terrorism, and who are we going to bomb there? Colorado? Louisville? That's where he was from. We're going to level Louisville because that's where he's from. Just start bombing everybody because everybody in Louisville must be a terrorist. I don't know. I do know. That's stupid. That's ridiculous. 9/11, 3,000 died. Afghanistan, 15,000 died. 15,000 is more than 3,000. And then 500,000 Iraqi people.
Finally, if Congress believes, as I do, that we are at war with ISIL, it should go ahead and vote to authorize the continued use of military force against these terrorists. For over a year, I have ordered our military to take thousands of airstrikes against ISIL targets. I think it's time for Congress to vote to demonstrate that the American people are united and committed to this fight. My fellow Americans, these are the steps that we can take.
War. He's talking about war. We've been at war for a while, though, haven't we?
Let me now say a word about what we should not do. We should not be drawn once more into a long and costly ground war in Iraq or Syria. That's what groups like ISIL want. They know they can't defeat us on the battlefield.
So what kind of war you want, Mr. President?
Part of the insurgency that we faced in Iraq. But they also know that if we occupy foreign lands, they can maintain insurgencies for years, killing thousands of our troops, draining our resources, and using our presence to draw new recruits.
True.
The strategy that we are using now, airstrikes, special forces, and working with local forces who are fighting to regain control of their own country, that is how we'll achieve a more sustainable victory. And it won't require us sending a new generation of Americans overseas to fight and die for another decade on foreign soil. Here's what else we cannot do. We cannot turn against one another by letting this fight be defined as a war between America and Islam. That, too, is what groups like ISIL want. ISIL does not speak for Islam. They are thugs and killers, part of a cult of death. And they account for a tiny fraction of more than 1 billion Muslims around the world.